Hey, hey, hey. Hello, and welcome back to Babblings podcast. Oh my goodness, my friends. It has been a month since I put out a podcast and a month since I've been in Puerto Rico. I miss her dearly. Dearly. I'm so excited to be filming, back on camera, back on mic, and we have a lot to cover today, and I'm so excited. It has been a month since I updated the last podcast, and hello, if you're new, welcome. But I was doing podcasts really regularly over the summer, and I feel like this is just kind of the flow that I get into I get in a flow state with writing as soon as the crisp air hits, like fall through spring. I just have a lot more of this like flowing energy of like creativity when I'm writing and ideas and it's just flowing. And then summer, I think it's just the season, the time of year. I'm like out ready to go, podcast, put myself on camera. I don't know. I just, and the flow of writing doesn't flow the same. But, anyways, no matter what, I have decided through that process and, just forever figuring out babblings, I've decided to do the podcast once a month. And that way I have a lot more time to dedicate because I do want the podcast to be centered around a larger topic. And maybe I will still come on and do babblings as just like extra when I have the energy to do that. But right now, because writing flows so much and I've had a lot of stuff up on Substack since I put the last podcast episode out. So if you're not, please make sure to go subscribe to my Substack, babblings.substack.com. I posted poetry from when I was in Puerto Rico. I post journal entries, essays, one-offs. Live from the End Time is my sporadic publication that is, I call it my primary source, and I'm leaving for the aliens. It's all about current events. And so if you're really into like the podcast and the current event side of the podcast, you would like Live from the End Times and vice versa. So just like the writing comes a lot easier. So it's easier for me to just like pump that out weekly. And with the podcast, I have so many ideas to do episodes like this where it is more in depth and it just takes more time. And I want to be diligent as I'm researching and pulling resources for you guys. So I want to give myself more time to really produce these podcast episodes, which means I just have to put more time into it. And so it's just not easy to put up these more like in-depth and researched podcast episodes weekly. So that's why I'm planning right now to do that once a month. But on my Substack, there is something pretty much every week. It's not always the same. It's going to be different. You don't know what you're going to get from me, but there is content for you weekly to engage with and to digest. If you are watching on YouTube, give me a subscribe, give me a like. If you're listening on a podcast platform, leave me a rating. If you are on Substack, again, make sure you are subscribed and you can also like this post on Substack as well. Engagement really helps push out my content to more people so we can make a bigger babblings community. I've really just been vibing lately, you guys, applying for some part-time jobs. I'm working on going back to school online. There's just a lot of like floating pieces in my life right now, which are really exciting, but it's also really stressful. I'm not someone that I don't like not having money. Not that anybody likes not having money, but it's something that is really a strain for me not to have a consistent cash flow. Like that really bothers me deep in my soul beyond just financial stress, which financial stress in general, not just pertaining to me, is some of the craziest and like darkest stress that we can really experience, and nobody talks about it, and we kind of just have to like keep moving. But especially right now with so many people finding it hard to find a job, so many people struggling to make ends meet even when they do have a job, we're all collectively experiencing so much financial stress, and it is important to talk about and is important to address. And I think it's also important to, if you are someone that is maybe not experiencing that much financial stress, to reach out to your friends that maybe are, or also like being aware of people that are having a hard time. And it kind of goes with the topic that we're going to get into about celebrity worship and parasocial relationships. But this idea of keeping up with the Joneses, right? Keeping up appearances, showing on social media that you can do all of these different things. And if you financially can, great. But I think being aware of how you are asking your friends that maybe aren't, or your family that aren't in that same financial position, how you're asking them to interact with you or to participate in that culture. I think being aware of that is like really important, because when we're not aware of that and we're continually trying to put people in positions to do things that they legitimately can't afford in this day and age, in order to maybe keep those friendships or to feel included or to not want to seem like you're not on the same level as like your friends, you might do things like put yourself into more debt than is necessary, or put yourself in situations that you wouldn't before, just to make it seem like you are doing better than you are. Like, I think it's just important to really start to be aware of what other people are going through financially and what other people's financial experiences may be. And that if someone is financially having a hard time, that does not make them lesser. That does not mean that they're not a hard worker. That does not mean that they're lazy. Because you make more money does not mean that you are better than anyone. You know, I'm door dashing right now, and I've had like just like some random people sometimes be like, "Oh, you're door dashing," or da da da. Like, yeah, like no labor is beneath me, I feel. And I feel like we all need to collectively feel that as well. Like no labor is beneath any of us. So anyways, I'm babbling, but I just feel like now it is just so important to Celine is coming. Hello. Celine, do you want to say hi? Say hello. You have anything to say? No. She has nada to say, except that she wants to lay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like babbling now. It's just now more than ever, I think it's really important. And I'm babbling, but this thought is just coming to me because also I'm thinking about Wendy from the Real Housewives of Potomac. Potomac? The Real Housewives of Potomac, her and her husband Eddie, Happy Eddie, he had a weed company. They just were charged with like each 17 or 18 counts of fraud. And there's details coming out about how they made a fraudulent insurance claim for all of this missing jewelry, that someone like burglarized their house. But then there's images of Wendy wearing said jewelry post the burglary, and then there was this whole investigation by the insurance company, because they don't take things like that lightly, right? Like insurance, especially if you're making a $200,000 claim, they're coming out to make sure that everything adds up. And so it seems that as their insurance has investigated, things are not adding up. It doesn't seem like there's not evidence that there was an actual burglary, just all of these things. And it just breaks my heart because I love Wendy and I love Eddie, and they have such young kids, like between the ages of probably like 8 and 13, and they could potentially be going to jail. You know, these are serious felonies. And I mostly am just sad that they got caught, you know, because I'm like, whatever, do your thing. I don't care if you're stealing from insurance companies, you know, like don't fraud the elderly like Jen Shaw, and victims like Tom Girardi, Erica Jane's ex-husband, did. But to do it so dumb, to do it so carelessly, to get caught, and now to completely, I mean, he's going to lose his law license. Like they're going to lose everything. It's going to completely turn their lives upside down. And it's interesting because since Wendy's been on the show, there's been lots of commentary, and the audience have noticed that through the years, she's really changed from this really like academic professor, political commentator persona to like Instagram baddie. And, you know, people get into these circumstances trying to keep up, trying to show that you have money, trying to show that you have wealth, and live outside of their means. You know, it's not just the lower class, those experiencing financial distress. Like the rich are as well, the upper classes are as well, celebrities are as well, which is why they're like hawking all of these products at us, which we will get into. This ties into everything we're going to talk about later. But I don't know, that was just top of mind because everything going on with Wendy, and it makes me so sad. And people are going to get more and more desperate in order to make ends meet. But I truly feel that if we can decondition ourselves and break away from this just like over consumerism, like overconsumption is the word that I maybe mean. This like crazy capitalistic views of where we need the nicest things and the nicest houses and it has to be brand new and all these different things, like shaping our identities. If we can walk away from that and shape our identities around some things more personal about our actual character and enjoy what we have and not constantly crave the newest and go to the thrift store like I do to buy all of my small kitchen appliances. I've never bought a new coffee pot. I buy them from $5 at the thrift store. You know, like if we could reframe the way that we view consumption and finances and what like quote wealth looks like or is appreciated as, I think we could really free ourselves, save ourselves and a lot of people that we know from making dangerous and drastic decisions in order to maintain a status quo. Unless you can get away with it. Like, I wouldn't be mad if you stole $200,000 from with insurance fraud. Like, you're not hurting anyone but the big corporations, but you got to get away with it, baby. You can't be messy. And financial stress makes people messy because it puts this kind of pressure on you where you can rationalize anything for a buck. If you're watching this on video, I'm in my room on my bed. Do we like this setup? Also, I realized today I've never worn this shirt for a podcast. It's one of my favorite shirts. Yeah, no, but let me know. Do we like this setup? The light's probably pretty blown out because all the light is behind me. So I'll have to find like a better time of day to record, but I just love this bed frame and I love this window and it's really cozy. So yeah, let's be cozy. Let's go ahead and pull an oracle card for you guys. We're going to do an oracle card instead of a tarot card. This is the Wild Unknown Archetypes deck by Kim Kranz. And so we're going to pull one of these beautiful cards to hear what you need to know. Here we go. Wow. That flipped out pretty quickly and pretty abruptly. We have the 1 card, and it is number 30. Is that focusing? There we go. The 1 card. Let's read about the 1 card. There we go. Okay, the 1, non-duality, one love, unus mundus. Our ability to experience this archetype firsthand is limited. It comes in brief and potent moments that we are left to savor for a lifetime. The 1 is both the energy that unites all living beings and our capacity to sense this intimate union. This archetype eludes most of our lives, appearing as a concept in a distant galaxy. Yet, we are in the midst of its power. A solemn reverence falls across all the land. We glimpse ourselves in the vastness of all consciousness and are neither small nor large within that field. We are neither important nor unimportant. All duality fades away, and we are left with what is the precious knowing that life is a gift, and we are both the giver and the receiver of this fortune. The unus mundus is a circle representing the unity of existence. It is possible that the beginning and the end of all things is love. It is said that Om is the primordial sound of the universe, and that all other mantras are born from it. Simply imagining this possibility will activate the 1. Wow, beautiful. I think that this is a beautiful reminder that we're all connected. And also, similarly to what I was just talking about, sometimes we search for fulfillment in all of these other things, and often it's within ourselves, right? This peace we can find within ourselves, an inner knowing, an inner joy, a connection with our higher selves in the universe. The capacity to be fulfilled in this way is all inside of us, and I think that it is the most fulfilling. I think the more that we turn inwards and look to find that fulfillment inward, and the less that we do that outwardly, the closer we can get to the feeling of the 1. I mean, to me, this is just To me, this is really, the feeling of the universe, of all connection, of as above, so below. And I really like the end. I think she says, the precious knowing that life is a gift and we are both the giver and the receiver of this fortune. And exactly, what I'm saying. Like, there's a reminder here to flow and to maybe get comfortable with postulating between different dualities and learning the dualities of yourself, and like the two sides of the same coin. It's still the same coin, right? Two sides of the same person. It's still the same person. Being able to find balance in our shadow and in our light, I feel is the ultimate goal and can bring us to oneness. So I think this is just a reminder to accept your own duality, accept the light and the dark, see where you can balance them, and they both have positive and negative aspects. And that leads us to finding the joy in life. Once we can find that balance within ourselves, and even that is like ever flowing, right? But once we can begin to find that place and begin to accept all aspects of ourselves, and then we can accept all aspects of other people, we can start to live in a more peaceful and joyful mindset. If you feel like you're searching for the one romantically, or if you feel like you're searching for the one idea or the one project, if you're searching for the quote, the one, in something external, you're never going to find it until you become one within yourself and you integrate the good and the bad and you look at all aspects that make up the one that is you. And I think that you'll find that the one you were searching for externally was just a band-aid for the lack of inner peace, inner joy, inner balance within yourself. It starts with the self. It starts with the one inside of us. It starts with alchemizing there. I pulled one more card and I got the cave. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the key word for when it's light is the sacred center within. And, the cave is a place of mystery. It's a place of dark, but it's a place you go in, you dive into, and you are completely changed. And so maybe this is something somebody may want to journal about or investigate within themselves, or maybe this is just something to start noticing. But to start exploring the cave, getting comfortable with the darkness inside. Yeah, I think it's maybe time for someone to start really investigating. And this could be all of us collectively and at different stages. Some of us may have already begun, some of us may just having the thought to start. But there's really an investigation into our darkness and like, what do I not like about myself, and what does that say about me that I don't like that about myself, and can I accept this about myself? How can I accept this about myself? Am I really ready to accept that, nasty parts of me? And also, what can I clear out? What is just debris and cobwebs that, these patterns, thought patterns, habits that I have that are really not serving me, and they're things that can be changed. How do I clear that out? How do I clear out the surface stuff to really dive deep into the roots, you know? Into investigating your personality. I feel like so many people don't know who they are, who you really are, and why you really think certain ways, and what developed and happened to get there. Well, somebody might need to go to therapy, y'all. We might all need to go to therapy. But anyways, I'm getting on a bit of a tangent now. I just think these are beautiful cards, and really it's just a call, an initiation to maybe begin some shadow alchemy and figure out the parts of yourself to integrate and find balance within, and to stop looking externally. to fulfill those things. So let's get into some current events. I wanted to start by sharing and recommending that you guys go watch this short documentary by Al Jazeera. It's called Trapped in Tunisia. It's about all of these African refugees in Tunisia that are trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea in order to migrate to Europe. And these are people coming from places where there's political unrest, violence, war, conflict, trying to seek out refuge. And there are 20,000 refugees in Tunisia and thousands of migrants that are trapped there because they're trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea. And the Tunisian government is not allowing that to happen. The Tunisian government is actually in works with the European Union, and they gave them $100 million in order to up border control. And since the EU partnered with Tunisia, the rate of people migrating from Africa to Europe has dropped by 80%. These refugees are forced to try to attempt to cross the Mediterranean Sea in these small metal or inflatable dinghy like boats, and more often than not they are captured. There are videos of the Tunisian Coast Guard sinking boats, and people that are captured trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea are not just being returned back to the refugee camps in Tunisia, but they're being deserted and dropped off to the desert. 17,000 migrants were deported to the desert in 2024. There's videos of people trying to make their way through the desert, no resources, no food, no water. Basically, they're left there to die. And there are other accounts of women being captured and experiencing some of the most horrendous abuse that you can imagine. And EU officials know that this is going on. They're paying for it to go on and are asserting that these casualties are just a requirement in order to bring down immigration. So if you want to get more information on that, again, it's called Trapped in Tunisia. It will be linked below. I highly recommend that you check it out. I'm not the first person to say this, but many of the conflict and genocides and horrors that are going on in like Africa, like in the Congo and in Sudan, are so underreported, just like this happening in Tunisia. It's so underreported by media compared to what's going on in Palestine. Not to say that one is more important than the other, but clearly some people are deciding that one is more important than the other. And it's important to call attention to problems going on everywhere globally. In other news, a typhoon hit Alaska on Sunday, October 12th, displacing thousands of people. At least one person dead. Last time that I looked things up, 20 were still missing. Typhoon Halong, it hit the southwestern side of Alaska, causing massive damage to these communities and primarily indigenous communities. I have a video from TikTok that I want to go ahead and play from you guys now by, I believe her name is Charity, and she puts into words better than I can the oppression and systematic, violence and resettling of indigenous peoples that have led to why this is so disastrous today.
What's happening right now in Western Alaska, in Kipnik, Quig, and other communities is absolutely devastating. Typhoon Halong has caused massive flooding. Homes have been torn from their foundations, and some are even floating miles down the river or out into the ocean. People are missing, and families have lost everything. And yet almost no one is talking about it. Right now, it's only local media covering these stories, or us, community members. But this deserves national and international attention. To understand why these storms hit so hard, we have to remember our history. Once Alaska became a U.S. territory in 1949, the federal government forced our people and our children to attend school, or their parents faced incarceration. This policy broke apart traditional ways of life and forced Yupik people to permanently settle into areas of land. But settler colonialism forced us to live on small, flood-prone patches of land that were never meant for permanent settlement. Now, as the Arctic warms faster than anywhere else on the Earth, storms like this are growing even stronger, and they're destroying entire communities. This is not just a natural disaster. This is climate injustice. We need the world to see what's happening here. Climate change in the Arctic isn't just about our polar bears or melting ice. It's about our people. Our communities are on the front lines, and we need the world to pay attention. To those watching this, to those in media, to those especially who look to Indigenous peoples for our stories and our knowledge, do what you can to make this injustice visible, not only to the rest of this country, but to the world. Because this isn't a story that just happened yesterday or years ago. This is happening right now as I speak.
As we know, there were also cuts earlier this year to the National Weather Service and the NOAA. And do these cuts have anything to do with the typhoon coming and people not having an adequate amount of time in order to prepare and evacuate? And while there is not concrete evidence or data that could say that these cuts to the NWS directly resulted in how disastrous this typhoon was, climate scientist Rick Tommen writes, there have not been any upper air weather balloon observations at St. Paul Island in the Bering Sea since late August, or, and I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Kotzebue since February. Bethel and Cold Bay, and these are Alaskan towns, are limited to one per day instead of two. At Nome, there were no weather balloons for 2 full days as the storm was moving towards the Bering Sea. So, it seems because of the budget and employee cuts to the NWS, you can assume that that's why weather balloon observations are not running as frequently as they have previously, and to not have that kind of data puts communities clearly in risk. Also this week, on Wednesday, October 15th, the Pentagon no longer has a media corp, as all media outlets refused to sign a statement acknowledging Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's new reporting restrictions, except for One American News, a known conservative news media outlet. Even Fox didn't sign this pledge. On Wednesday, media people that worked in the Pentagon covering the now named Department of War turned in their badges and were escorted off the property. The Pentagon Press Association statement said, today, the Defense Department confiscated badges of the Pentagon reporters from virtually every major media organization in America. It did this because reporters would not sign onto a new media policy over its implicit threat of criminalizing national security reporting and exposing those who sign it to potential prosecution. The Pentagon Press Association's members are still committed to reporting on the U.S. military, but make no mistake, today, October 15th, 2025, is a dark day for press freedom that raises concerns about a weakening U.S. commitment to transparency in governance, to public accountability at the Pentagon, and to free speech for all. This is very, very, very dangerous precedent to be removing media and making it harder and harder and basically criminalizing potentially those that do report on the Department of Defense and the U.S. military. What do they not want to be reported on? What do they want to hide? And I think it also is very interesting that the only media outlet that signed Pete Hegseth's new media policy was One American News. All right, let's get into our main topic today. As most things that I talk about, I have been ruminating on this for quite some time, but we're going to talk about celebrity worship, parasocial relationships, and really celebrity idolatry, making an idol of a celebrity, and how basically praying at their feet is doing such a disservice to our current society and furtherment of society. Also, particularly how celebrities are used to distract and cover up from the real problems in our world and society today. Give them bread and circuses and they'll never revolt is a quote that I'm sure you've probably heard before. The idea to give them food and entertainment, and you won't have to worry about them paying attention to what's going on behind the curtain. The Wizard of Oz putting on a show or a display of power to distract that it's really just a normal man playing with a machine. And almost 2,000 years ago, when they were experiencing the same problems in imperial Rome, the Roman poet Juvenal first coined the term bread and circuses. Obviously, it was different in Latin to name the devices of distraction that the Roman Empire were using in order to distance people from the actually atrocious policies that were being put into place. And back then, it was quite literally bread and not necessarily circuses, but its early predecessor, gladiator fights. And we'll actually get into the most modern version of gladiator fights, the NFL and football, in a little bit. And as we get into this discussion, I can already feel the defense. I can already feel people getting defensive, and I've not even said a celebrity's name yet. But I want us to drop the defense, and I want us to have this conversation as the beginning of investigating within yourself who you are defending, why you're defending them. Do they deserve to be defended? Do they deserve your admiration? And truly investigating why you may feel such strong feelings of either love or hate towards a specific celebrity. So let's talk about it. In order to start, we have to face the facts. And the facts are that your favorite billionaire doesn't know who you are and they don't give a shit about you. No matter what they claim, no matter what they say, and part of that isn't necessarily because these are, bad people, but numbers are hard to conceptualize when they're not in your face. To have hundreds of thousands of fans, it's one thing to say that, but when it's just a number, for it to actually mean something, to Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Kamala Harris, Chris Brown, Jay-Z, Billie Eilish, Ariana Grande were nothing but numbers and data points, no matter what they say. And I'm not saying that they're lying, right? I'm not saying that celebrities are lying when they say they care about their fans. I don't think that they're inherently lying, but I think that what they mean and then the way that we as fans interpret it are two different things. They care how you receive the project that they put out. They care that you enjoy it. They care that you have a good time while you're at the concert. But do they care that you can't afford to buy your own groceries? Do they care that your car broke down? Do they care that when the earth is no longer livable because of global warming, that we will be stuck here and that they can get in the spaceships and go to Mars? No, I don't think that they care about that. Remember when I was talking about how everybody's having a hard time financially? Well, so are celebrities. They're hawking all of this merch. Everyone's on tour. Everyone has a product to launch because they are capitalizing on their fan base in order to make as much money as they can. And I think most celebrities are more than happy to distract us on behalf of the government so that we don't look at truly how awful and digest everything that is going on because we're distracted with sparkles and sequins and cowboy hats and the Met Gala and the Kardashians are back on Hulu and Kylie Jenner's going back to her King Kylie era. They're more than happy to do that work on behalf of the government in order to get a big paycheck from all of us. It's so funny because I usually have these ideas and start outlining these things pretty far in advance. And then, of course, by the time that I go to record these episodes, it's actually very timely. Taylor Swift just came out with her album, The Life of a Showgirl, last week, came out to very mixed reviews. I listened to a couple songs. It's not like the next great album of the world, but it's also not like the worst thing that I've ever listened to, but it's also not profound. It doesn't have a message. It doesn't have anything to really say or contribute to the world. Despite the mixed reviews, despite the criticism, Taylor Swift still broke records, breaking the record for most albums sold within the first week, which was most recently held by Adele's 25 album. Billboard states the first week sales of The Life of a Showgirl were powered by its availability across 38 versions of the album over its first week. There were 27 physical editions and 11 digital download editions. Of the physical editions, there were 16 CDs, 2 deluxe CD box sets containing branded clothing, 8 vinyl LPs, and 1 cassette. And unfortunately, I see her fans praising her, right? Girl boss, she did it again. As if this is a triumphant moment for her, as if she is the underdog, proving once again that she is the best musical talent and can sell the most albums. Well, like the Billboard article said, there were 38 versions of this album. And I can bet that at least 70% of her fan base who bought an album bought more than one version. And I know this because I just saw a TikTok the other day of a woman in a room twice the size of the bedroom that I'm sitting in, laying on the floor with the floor covered in her vinyl collection, most of which was Taylor Swift albums, most of which were copies or different alternate versions of the same album. And so I did a little bit of math. Let's say that all 4 million of her sales were actually only comprised of one person buying all 38 different versions of the album. Say that that's what it was about. So divided by 38, that would mean that actually only 105,000 people bought the album but bought it in 38 different ways. And now that's just easy math numbers, and obviously every single person that bought an album didn't buy all 38 versions, but I can bet that many, many people did buy at least 1 to 3 different versions of the album, and also that counts streams a little bit too. But what I'm getting at is that 4 million records sold, breaking the record sold in a week, is an inflated number. Her and her team do this purposefully. They offer all of these different versions. She's selling you voice notes for $5 that make her look dumb, by the way, um, in order to make it seem like she's the Beatles, to make it seem like she's so popular. She sold 4 million albums in 1 week. No, like as if 4 million people bought her album in 1 week. And that's just not true. This isn't some triumphant story of the underdog proving everyone wrong, and actually, they have the biggest fan base in the world. It's just actually a story of a woman hawking her album in all of these different ways in order to make the most money that her and her team can profit off of. And again, in today's economy, I find that disgusting and disturbing. And it's not just her. There are many, many celebrities that maybe don't hawk 38 different versions of their album, but concert tickets, meet and greet tickets, merchandise, hair care lines, all of these different things in today's economy. We have to take the blinders off and realize that it is all for their benefit and their profit. Taking advantage of this fan base that is so deeply invested in them and selling them anything because they know that they can. Also, going on right now is the Chris Brown tour, the Breezy Bowl tour, in which I have seen many people that I know go to. And I want to hold everyone's hand when I say this, but even if he was not a known abuser, his dancing is mediocre and he is not like some great vocalist of our generation. There he's charging $1,700 for a meet and greet. A meet and greet ticket for just meet and greet is $1,700, okay? So there's exploiting people in that way. And then all of these women are so have concocted this intimate parasocial relationship with him that when they get these meet and greets, they're taking photos pretending like he's taking their panties off, taking photos with an ultrasound picture as if he's their baby daddy. These extremely intimate things they're doing with this celebrity who's also doing this with thousands and thousands of other women. The women that he brings on stage to simulate sex with, think about all of the thousands of other women that he's doing this with. It's one, I think, degrading, but also he is a known abuser. He was charged with assault. He runs amok all over the world. hurting and abusing specifically women, and yet women continue to uphold and support him and turn the other way. I have my glasses on again. In a 2023 article about parasocial relationships, Cynthia Vinny describes them as blurring the line between admiration and perceived intimacy between a media user and a public figure. Media users can form parasocial relationships with celebrities, live action fictional characters, social media influencers, animated characters, and any other figure they encounter through media, including movies, TV shows, podcasts, radio talk shows, or social media platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. And this is not something new. Parasocial relationships and this one sided bond that the public perceives to have with this celebrity, the concept was originally coined in the 1950s by Donald Horton and R. Richard Wool as they saw this phenomenon begin to happen with people and at the time, radio shows. Humans desire and are wired to create connection in order for our survival, right? We hear all of the time, it takes a village to raise a child, and it truly does. And it also takes a village to be a fulfilled adult and to live your life, right? We need people, we need connections for social reasons, we need connections for emotional reasons, we need connections for resources, we need connections for knowledge and for growth and for survival. And we not only n- need it, but we crave it, right? And we're created in order to create connection. And in today's day and age, and all the way back to the 50s, that hardwired instinct in us also translates to people that we may not know personally, but that we get a lot of intimate access to, that we hear in our AirPods, that we see on our TV or a movie screen. A YouTuber taking us through their day, showing us their clothing haul, me talking to you guys about my life. We create these connections through perceived intimacy. An article on celebrity worship expands more on this, saying, quote, "Our brains never evolved to distinguish between people we see and hear through media and those we see and hear in real life. Therefore, we process and respond to these encounters similarly, leading to the parasocial phenomenon in all of their forms." And researchers and psychologists agree that parasocial relationships are normal. And, I'm not a very parasocial person. I guess I should have also prefaced this at the beginning. Like, I'm not a big fan person. I like things, I like people, I like art that gets put out, I like music, yada 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 yada, but I've never been like a fan girl. I've never like collected every poster that I could find. I've never really, until recently, like I would say like the last 8 years, started following celebrities on social media. You see and hear things in pop culture. I used to watch news, but I was never truly invested in people's and celebrities' lives and life choices. I'm usually don't know like lore on songs or albums or art that people put out, like because I'm just not very invested in a celebrity's personal life. And I don't assume that they're invested in mine either. I'm not someone that buys merch. I rarely go to concerts. I'm not a buy a special edition unless it's a book that I really love. I don't follow authors. I find that I create these more parasocial connections or have parasocial interactions because, as I've researched, there's a difference between parasocial relationships and parasocial interactions. But I find that I encounter these the most with like niche YouTubers or podcasters. Like, it's never somebody like really, really popular. It's somebody that's a little bit more of a niche. They have a smaller audience, somebody that I regularly engage with, and only really to the extent where I feel comforted watching them, or I will like laugh out loud or maybe reply out loud to something somebody says, or I might pull up a video and be like, "Oh yeah, I missed you." But that's really the extent in which I like engage in parasocialness. But again, I want to say like people have found, like, this is a normal thing. Just like I said, just like what the quote that I read, our brains have not been able to distinguish between real life connections and these media personas. And so we're just going to naturally create a relationship and a connection. In many cases, it's healthy and can be positive for people's lives, reducing feelings of loneliness, making people feel like they're a part of something bigger, inspiring people to do better or to do more. But it also has its negative side. In the early thousands is when the idea of celebrity worship kind of came around and started to really be studied as we start to see the surge in tabloids and influencers and crazy media culture. Celebrity worship can be defined as an obsessive fascination with a famous person. And in 2002, Lynn McCutcheon and her colleagues published Conceptualization and Measurement of Celebrity Worship in the British Journal of Psychology and introduced the concept of celebrity worship. And they included the celebrity attitude scale in order to measure where someone was at in their level of worship of a celebrity. The celebrity attitude scale starts at the lowest, which is entertainment social level. This is someone that regularly buys concert tickets. You maybe go to fan events and meet and greets. You follow them on social media. You keep up to date. You talk to your friends and family about them, but that's kind of the extent of the entertainment social level. The intense personal level is the next step up from that. You're a little bit more obsessed. You're engaging in all of the same ways that you are at that lower level, but it's becoming more compulsive. It's becoming something more and more that you need to feel fulfillment, and it's also becoming very emotional. What the celebrity is going through really affects your emotions. What they do or what they say really affects you and your mental health. You're becoming very emotionally involved at this stage. Then the third level is the borderline pathological level. And this is where we get to all of those things, but like you cannot control the obsession that you have with this person, and or fantasies that you have about this person, and all of these levels truly build upon each other. You can't just all the way be at level 3 without having gone through the first stage, right? And I would say most people are probably at that first stage where you're really interacting a lot with the celebrity. You're buying all of the things. You're buying multiple versions of the album that Taylor Swift is putting out. You're going multiple times to a Beyonce concert. You're going to meet and greets. You join an online or an in-person fan club. Or you're talking to your family and friends about everything that this celebrity is doing. Harmless on this level. From what I've read, also, there is a difference between being a fan and having a parasocial relationship. And also, having a parasocial relationship doesn't necessarily mean that you're worshiping this celebrity. And I like to not just say celebrity worship, but celebrity idolatry is the term that I like more, because it's not just, I feel like worship invokes this idea of praying to a celebrity or intense devotion or being a devout disciple. But idolatry, I feel like, really singles in on this idea of upholding and putting this celebrity on a pedestal above you, giving the effect that they are an idol, someone to look up to, someone to base your personality off of. And then I guess with the money that gets put into these celebrities, that we are paying for all of these things, that's kind of where the worship part comes in too. And I think it gets dangerous when we begin to idolize and idealize these people that we really don't know. These people are not gods. They are not bigger than us mere mortals. They are not our saviors either. And oftentimes, not good role models. I don't think anyone that has $1 billion is a good role model. There's no way to be an ethical billionaire. There's no way to be an ethical multi-millionaire. And just because someone has a lot of money, that doesn't mean that they should be a role model to us. Or just because someone has a lot of perceived success also doesn't mean that they should be a role model to us. But that also requires us to really investigate and change the ways in which we view wealth, upward mobility, in which we understand class, in the ways in which we understand money, and the ways in which we view people with money as potentially being better or smarter or more capable, and that's just not true. I think also I am at the point where I am disgusted by obscene amounts of money. And I'm a Taurus, okay? And a Sag rising. I love to shop. I've always loved a material thing. I've always loved an extra lip gloss. Like, I love luxury. I used to love luxury goods. I used to want all of the luxury purses. I wanted all of the luxury clothing. I wanted, all of the luxury things. And now I am physically disgusted by all of those things. One, because I have changed that desire for luxury. I have examined it and I've realized that it's not luxury I desire in my life, but I desire quality, and quality does not necessarily have a price point to it. Most of these luxury brands are actually just like shit products. I have changed what I aspire to be. I do not aspire to have a McMansion and drive a Rolls Royce and be a girl boss. Like, I don't aspire to have large amounts of money. I aspire to be able to live joyfully and fully. And when I was in real estate, actually is when this mindset really started to change, because I was in a training, and one of the things that they had us do was, write down realistically how much money you actually need. Do the math of how much money you actually need in order to live a fulfilled life and do all of the things you want to do. Have the savings, go on the vacations, have the home you want to live in, pay for your car, have health insurance, buy food, go out to eat, have experiences, do shop if you want to shop, get a facial if you want a facial every month. Break that all down, find out what that all costs, and look at it. And when I did that, and I realized that I really only need like $150,000 a year to live, what I thought was my dream life. And I thought I needed multi-million dollars. It just completely changed my idea of what I was actually striving for. It made it seem much more attainable. But then I also got very realistic, because I was like, okay, if that's all the money I need to live a full and fulfilled life, and it's not the most luxurious life, but I can get a massage every month, or I can do, I can live what I think is luxurious and quality, and it only takes 150,000 for me to do that as a single person. Definitely different if you have children and a family. Then what are the Kardashians and Beyonce and Jay-Z doing with their billions of dollars? Like, we cannot, and I cannot stress this enough, that we as the average Joe public that make under, I would say, $500,000 a year, average salary, $500,000 and under. I truly feel, and it might be under $1 million and under a year, that we cannot even begin to comprehend what it is like to have $1 billion, right? Because, think about it. Like, if I only need $150,000 to live a fulfilled life, but I'm a millionaire, what am I doing with the rest of that fucking money? I'm going to spend it on more things. I'm going to buy more expensive things, maybe. I'm going to invest it in real estate, I guess. But I have this plethora of money. Think about that then on the scale of a billionaire and $1 billion. And you maybe only need, maybe it only takes like $100 million to live the fabulous life that you live. And then what the fuck do you do with the rest of the $900 million? Like, try to actually conceptualize that when you have that much excess of money, and then think about how they're not doing anything even remotely productive with that money. Are schools and libraries being built? Are people's educations being paid for? Are buildings being built to house the unhoused? Like, what are you doing with that money? Because you don't actually need all of it. And when you're not doing anything productive, you're definitely doing something dirty. I mean, we've talked about the Diddy stuff. We could talk about, the Epstein stuff and the scandals of the elite, because when you have that much money and you don't need to spend any time, somebody shops for you, somebody cooks for you, somebody cleans for you, somebody drives you around, somebody sets your appointments, somebody goes to meetings on your behalf, and you have nothing to do but sit around with your excess of money. What are you going to do? You're going to start paying for prostitutes. You're going to start, like doing all of this like nefarious shit because you can. You're going to buy a gold toilet because you can. And I think that that's one of the things that keeps so much of us in the dark and keeps so many people in this loop of celebrity worship and not idealizing, idolizing these celebrities, because we cannot truly comprehend the disgusting wealth that they actually are hoarding, because it is something that we'll never experience in our lifetime. The only thing that we can really even kind of comprehend, right, is what it would be like to not have to worry about your mortgage or your bills, and to just know that you're going to have money to pay it. Like, right? Like, I think that's like what we think being a billionaire is like, but it is so far beyond not worrying about a bill that we cannot even conceptualize what that is really like. I got a lottery ticket over the summer, like just for fun. It was a big pot, and I thought, heck, let me get a lottery ticket. And I was like, all right, well, like if I get this money, then like I'll do this and do this, and like I'd never have to do that. And then I was like, Allie, no. You know what I'd do with this money? Because I think it was maybe like $50 million. If I had won the lottery and got $50 million, I genuinely would probably only need half of that. So 25 million to set up my life for the rest of my life, like to have a small plot of land and a house paid off. That would only be probably 300K is probably what I would need. Then some money to set up an allowance for what I would assume would be the rest of my life. And that would maybe be, let's see. I'm 27, so let's say I live 70 more years. So, and I probably would need $100,000 every year if I've like outright got my land. So that would only be $7 million. I mean, we're not even at 10 million yet to just have a home that is secure and good enough for me. I don't need a McMansion. Like, my dream house is a cottage in the woods. So and then to set it up so that I can have $100,000 allowance for the next 70 years of my life, or until I die. So we're at $7,300,000. Then, I'll set my mom up, set my aunt up, da 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 da. By that time, we're probably not even close to 15 million, right? Because I'd also probably get a compound so everybody could live with me, and I'd set us all up, and I wouldn't set everyone else up for the rest of their lives, like with everything, but like I get us all in a position, like, where we wouldn't ever have to worry again. And I would probably still have $20 million left over. And is that just going to sit in the bank? No, I would give that away. I would give it away, because what am I going to do with it? Hoard it in case of a rainy day, I would keep some savings. I'd maybe keep a couple extra million. So even if I only have 5 million left over or 10 million left over, like I don't need $50 million. Like 10 million, I'd probably never have to work ever again in my life, and I would do it smart, and I'd set myself up right. But besides that, I'd give it away. I'd build homes for the unhoused. I would give it to schools. I would invest in community groups that are working to better the people around them. Like, what the fuck am I going to do with $50 million? And I feel like, you think that's crazy. But right, we just see numbers, but when you really break it down, you're like, holy fuck. That's a lot of money just sitting in a bank or sitting in an investment account, making more money that people may never touch in their lives. And I mean, I could still set aside money for those that come after me, for my legacy, and still be able to do a considerable amount of productive work for society and the community. Like, and for me, as this internet nobody to think that way, for me to also be this internet nobody that wouldn't be able to sleep with themselves at night if I didn't talk about what was really going on in the world, my minuscule audience, like, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. And so I just have no sympathy. I have no allowance. I have no room for forgiveness when it comes to these extremely powerful and wealthy people with 10 million times the audience that I have. How do you sleep at night when you're not commenting on anything or doing anything productive? Really? You post an infograph on your Instagram story, so does my mom. Like, so does my mom, and she's a teacher. Like, the standards have to be higher. We have to raise the bar. And so, going back to celebrity worship and the celebrity attitude scale, I kind of want to argue that I feel like there should be another level, in a more intermediate level, or since that was done over 20 years ago with the rise in social media and influencers, and just as our collective consciousness grows, I feel like there are more elements now that expand celebrity worship and celebrity culture. As our collective consciousness grows, as we're more willing to speak out about things, as we get a better understanding of the horrifying things going on in the world and the systems that uphold them, and we start to understand more of our power as the public, as we start to realize, pay more attention to where our money is going, and as we start to care more about who is profiting off of us, and are they ethical, are they moral, do they have aligned beliefs with me? So as we get more understanding of our power as consumers, and as cancel culture continues to evolve, we are beginning to change the way that we interact with celebrities or media personas. And I think some people, to the degree that I am, right, really deconstructing, unraveling, and being really disgusted by the whole thing. I think one of the greatest things that happened in the last 20 years is Susan Collin wrote The Hunger Games, and what's one of those dystopian works that, and also, right now, I just finished The Parable of the Sower, another great book that really speaks to and creates a picture of a world that I really do think we're facing in the beginning of the deterioration of society because of climate change. But I was saying Hunger Games because I feel like Suzanne Collins gave this whole generation, multiple generations, new vocabulary in order to point out that uncanny feeling, right? People are comparing the Met Gala to the Hunger Games. It's like the Capitol where they all dress up in these elaborate and disgusting, outfits, and it's just obscene, the wealth and the greed, and the hoarding of those resources that go on in the Capitol, and comparing that to celebrities today, and comparing the Met Gala to that, and it's this elaborate, distraction that gets absurder and absurder, and I'm sure will get even more absurd now that Lauren Sanchez Bezos is in charge of Vogue. Speaking of Lauren, it's I was also thinking the other day, it really reminded me of, the people in the Capitol and the Hunger Games, and how they have like all of these distorted faces and all of this plastic surgery, and some are even like animalistic, like tigress. And it was making me think about how, like, that elite circle caters their image and aesthetic to each other, right? Like, they're not trying, and that's happening today too. Like, Kim Kardashian, Selena Gomez, who else looks kind of crazy? Demi Lovato looks a little crazy. All of these, Miley Cyrus, Noah Cyrus, like, all these people have this very like uncanny valley, like, extreme surgeries to us that they look very weird. But if you look at the top dog, Lauren Sanchez Bezos, okay, that's who they're all mimicking. That's who they're all catering to. And they're all changing their faces and adding all of these fillers to impress each other. And it just reminded me of the same thing in the Capitol. They're doing all of these body modifications, all of these things similar to celebrities today to show how rich they are, that they're able to do all of these surgeries and have all of this filler, but then to also just like visually distinguish themselves from the lower class and to also impress within their elitist class. Anyways, I just was thinking about that the other day and I thought that was interesting. My eye itches. Oh shit, this is a long episode. Oh shit. Oh well. Anyways, what I was getting to is right that we're all beginning to notice these things and we're all collectively becoming more and more aware of where our dollars are going and who we're supporting can then impact someone else in devastating ways. Also, simultaneously, we have this extreme surveillance culture and morality police culture that is going on throughout social media. And then I feel like we bring it into the real world. And that goes along with cancel culture, right? And it starts off as this good thing of calling people out when they do unethical things or they say slurs or teaching people. And it comes from this want to not support bad people, right? We don't want to give bad people our money. We don't want to give bad people our views. We don't want to give bad people our energy and investment. And cancel culture is a whole other episode that we won't really get into, but it's kind of divulged right into what I've said, like this morality police where people are quick, and it's very common, I feel, amongst Gen Z and will be amongst Gen Alpha much more than it is among millennials, but it's still there. And the morality police are constantly surveilling to see who is bad and who is good. And we're becoming more and more aware with these ideas that who we like and who we interact with and whose art we enjoy reflects on us and says things about us. And if we like something from someone that's bad, then we are bad, or vice versa. If we like someone that's good, then we are good. The room for discourse or nuance is becoming smaller and smaller. In a Substack post on 2021, the Substack is Gen Zero. The article is Gen Z is reinventing Puritanism out of an abundance of concern. Tobias expands on my thoughts, talking about what has been coined now as Gen Z Puritanism or Gen Z Puritans, and how this video went viral of a girl saying that she was straight, but she liked gay porn and it was arousing for her. And all of the comments were back and forth of whether if she liked that and that was arousing for her, whether that was fetishizing gay men or not. And Tobias says, protecting specific groups is contingent on defining who is what. This is at odds with the idea that identity, at least gender and sexuality, is fluid and able to be self-defined. The concern that individuals exploring their identity can be harmful to others forces some to be so concerned with harm that they actively limit individual exploration. Additionally, out of this same preoccupation with harm comes the impulse to survey and respond to innocuous behavior. This comes in the form of paying hyper-specific attention to individual actions, ignoring systemic context, and putting the onus on individuals for society-wide crises. These Puritan ideas born out of a want to protect, inform, and further society actually has turned into this thing that removes all nuance and also context. And everything is not black and white. Everything is not just good and bad. And in this hyper surveilled world and in social media, people are more and more aware that people are surveilling them, watching them to see what they interact with, to see what they post, to see who they engage with, to see what celebrities they quote worship in order to judge whether because of those things they are morally or ethically correct or not. But I think this begs the question, is art required to be moral? And what does who do we idolize really say about us? I think that art is subjective, and I actually feel that morality is subjective as well, right? Depending on the religion or the culture that you were raised in, your morals could vary person to person, culture to culture, religion to religion, neighborhood to neighborhood. So, art that you think is moral, I might think is not moral based on my own preferences. Does art inherently need to be moral? I kind of say no. But I do think that if you're putting something out to be profited off of, you have a responsibility to the consumer to do so ethically. We'll talk about authors, right? And their novels and try to say that like their morally gray character, could be a reflection of the internal morality of the author. And I just don't think that that's true. I feel like, especially for authors and artists, we want to create something or put out a project to make people reflect on society and those around them and their own morality and comment on both the light and darkness in the world. But I do think that an artist or the person putting out the art can inform whether the art is ethical or moral or not. So just because you might put something out that is maybe demonstrating, something that's some people would see as morally wrong or whatever, I don't think that that makes the artist or the celebrity inherently morally wrong or nefarious, because it's also subjective. Like, what is the purpose of the art? What's the intent in the art? But I do think that if a artist or a celebrity is an unethical person or someone whose morals don't align with you, when they put something out, makes it in turn makes their art unethical. And I also think we're maybe arguing the wrong thing. I don't necessarily think it needs to be moral, because again, like, that's so subjective, just like whether is if art is good or not is very subjective. But ethics, things that we as a society kind of agree to, right? Things that we agree are right and wrong ways to do things. I do think it's important that if you're putting something out to be profited off of, that you as the artist or the celebrity have a responsibility to do it ethically. And so because we have this collective idea that the people that we idolize and that we look up to, or the people whose art we interact with, are reflections of ourselves and our own morals and ethicals, and we don't want to perceive us differently, two things have to happen. When the person that you love and the celebrity that you are obsessed with does something that is called out or doesn't match up, isn't done ethically, or doesn't match up with your morals or those of your community, you have to either drop them, you know, divest from them, or you have to defend them. And that is my biggest point, probably, of this whole thing, is that celebrities do not deserve you defending them. And if they do something that people don't agree with or looks odd, why do you feel the need to defend them? Art and artists, it should invite critique, it should invite discourse. If you're putting something out and you rely on the consumer to participate in order to profit off of it, you have some responsibility to do it in a way that is not harmful. And if they don't, you do not need to defend them, because they won't defend you. This is a parasocial relationship, which again is one sided. It's not necessarily that it's good or that it's bad, but it's a one sided relationship. And would you defend your aunt? Would you defend your cousin? Would you defend me if I did something questionable? And probably not. So why would you defend them? But I think most often people do it and they get so emotionally involved and so emotionally charged when trying to defend their favorite celebrity, because they're not really defending their favorite celebrity, they're defending themselves. They're defending why they are participating in something. Going back to Taylor Swift, is she the greatest lyricist of our time, or is it just not that deep? You have to choose a side. It can't be both. You can't be the best lyricist of our time, but then also be dumb enough and not that deep or take things that seriously so far to the point where she puts dog whistles in racially charged undertones in her music. Bad Bunny had a stance, a very impactful stance to not tour or perform in the United States. But now that he's offered the Super Bowl, he's saying yes. And I know many people will say it's a middle finger to conservative America. It's this, it's that. I think actually at the end of the day, if you were just going to say yes to the biggest platform in the world and all of that money, what was the point of saying no before? And I think it actually puts more people in more dangerous positions. And speaking of the NFL, I've linked a TikTok series for you guys. This wonderful TikToker goes in depth explaining the connections of the NFL and the music industry and the conservative party and American politics and how it is, our bread and circuses of our time and how they really use the NFL as a shield. And ever since Jay-Z took control of the live entertainment, it's been primarily Black and brown artists and they're arguing, that this is happening in order to make Black and brown people feel like they are a part of this, especially after all of the Colin Kaepernick stuff, and to make them feel enveloped in this process and to not make them feel othered from it, to keep them intertwined in the distraction along with the lower class white people. And people will say, well, they can do whatever they want. They can put out whatever music they want. They can they can do this. Yeah, we all have free will and we've got some free speech left in America. So you can do whatever you want. And yet, if you are someone with a platform, you have a responsibility for what you are putting out. It's documented that people with intense parasocial relationships and that are on the celebrity worship scale, those relationships impact how they vote. It impacts their political views. It impacts what people buy. It impacts how people dress. It impacts how people live their lives. It impacts decisions that people make in romantic areas of their lives. There was a study on celebrity impact on children in Ghana, and they found these parasocial relationships can, quote, influence their attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. As Hoffner and Bond intimated, adolescents usually want to live like, dress like, or act like their favorite celebrities. This is often demonstrated in a variety of areas, including interpersonal relationships, professional decisions, and personal values. As a result, most adolescents are more likely to indulge in illicit activities and behaviors in their bid to conform to their idealized celebrity role models. Research suggests that adolescents who have strong emotional associations with celebrities may be more susceptible to exaggerated and unrealistic portrayals, which could result in a skewed view of themselves and what other society expects of them. There's research that these intense parasocial relationships cause anxiety and depression and ruin your self-worth. And like I was talking about at the beginning, pouring your money into this image that you think you need to uphold based off of your role model. I think my point is that celebrities and artists are the ones responsible for their work. They're the ones that are responsible for defending it. They're the ones responsible for explaining it. And they're the ones accountable for any repercussions that what they produce would put out. And because of this return to Puritanism and this hyper surveillance on the internet, we are, instead of holding them responsible and accountable for what they are doing, we are fighting each other for interacting with them. And that goes right back to the bread and circuses. Do you see how it's a distraction on so many levels? It's a financial distraction. It's an emotional distraction. It's a distraction from politics, right? To have us so invested, but then to have us so also invested in discourse and surveilling each other instead of surveilling them, because they know that there are more of us than there are of them. And ultimately, we hold the power. We are the reason they're famous. We are the reason that they're billionaires. And if we were to all go away, if we were to collectively unite together, they would have no power. That goes for celebrities, musicians, artists, movie stars, and politicians. They all benefit off of us infighting with each other, defending whether someone's artistic choice was ethical or not, instead of truly divesting, returning to us in communities, and actually idolizing real people doing real things and making real movements. And mostly it is a distraction to keep us from really realizing how disproportionate wealth is in this country and is in this world. They rely on the fact that we cannot actually conceptualize what it is to have $1 billion. They rely on the fact we're gonna bop along and watch the movies and read the books and disassociate into these different worlds in order to not actually see it. People talk about the Matrix all the time. This is the Matrix. What are you consuming? Why are you consuming? And I don't really give a shit whether it's moral or not, but is it removing you from reality so much that you cannot actually fully comprehend how awful the state of the world is? Are you so invested in idealizing these people and these role models that you've never met that you take 1 to 2 sentences from interviews over the span of 20 years, 30 years sometimes, piece it together, project your own morals onto them in order to convince yourself that you're doing the right thing and who you're supporting is a good person and it's actually uplifting the world? When do we stop? When do we divest? When do we put all of that energy back into ourselves and into our friendships and into our families and into our communities? And I don't want to take away people's joy. I think people are like, let people have it, let people do this, let people do that, blah, 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 blah. And I honestly don't really care what you do in the privacy of your own home. If you listen to a Chris Brown song by yourself, like, I don't really care. But to go to his concert, to spend thousands of dollars on him, to another example would be like J.K. Rowling, right? I'm not saying that you can't, in your own private of your life, enjoy Harry Potter. Like, I already have all of the books. I'm never going to throw away or burn a book unless it's like torn apart. But I never come on here and promote it. I'm not going out and buying the fan fiction that is making people become interested in the original series all over again. I will not be streaming the new show on HBO. I am trying to thrift all of the DVDs, but I'm doing so intentionally to make sure that never again will one of my dollars knowingly go to JK Rowling. In your own home, if you have the DVDs or you want to read the books, I don't care. Thrift it, pirate it. I don't care. Download an EPUB PDF for free to read it. I don't care. But then don't talk about it. Don't go on a platform and promote it, right? I think that's very different. Like, do what you want to do in your house, to be honest, especially if you can do it in a way where you're not giving money to the people that when you're not giving money to these like nefarious people, like whatever. And that's how you can keep joy. That's how you can keep, reprieve from the atrocities in your life. That's how you can keep some escapism. That's how you can keep interacting with art that is fulfilling to you. But you don't need to bend over backwards to try to defend J.K. Rowling or say that are going to watch the show, but not you're gonna like hate on like you're gonna do all of these things. Like, no, like, it's not that we have no responsibility, but I find that so many people are quick to assert that celebrities don't have a responsibility, and I think that that's very, very dangerous. Anybody that puts art out, puts media out, puts anything out into the world to be consumed by others and potentially be profited off by others has a responsibility for how they do it and what they do. And it's up to you and your moral guidelines whether you agree with that person or not. It is not your job to break into their psyche and say, oh no, they actually meant it this way. If they meant it that way, It's their responsibility to clear it up or to put out better art that has a clearer message. Okay, this is a really long episode, you guys. Sorry, but I missed you guys so much. But I guess it works if I'm doing this once a month. Then if it's like 2 hours long, like whatever. Okay, let me kind of know your thoughts below. And I don't want anybody, I feel like I can already feel people getting defensive by this. And I'm not, again, like I'm not calling you out. I'm not trying to start like infighting. I'm just saying, like, really start to investigate and reflect on how you consume things, why you consume things, and who you're idolizing. Not who you're a fan of, not who you kind of like, not who you have an innocent parasocial relationship with, like I do with Veggie Gamer, who is a niche, movie, TV show reactor on YouTube. Like what's Veggie up to? Like, oh, I miss him. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about like when you go to the ends of the earth to defend this person, when you do body modifications to resemble this person, when what's going on in this person's world is the forefront of your thoughts and not what is going on in your own interpersonal world, like in your own interpersonal relationships. Like, how is this consuming you financially? Are you going into debt in order to financially contribute to this person? Like, how are you interacting with people? And begin to reframe that, I guess. Yeah, I don't know if any of that made sense, but I guess we'll see. Let me know below your thoughts. Feel free to agree or disagree. Let's have a little chat. What are your thoughts? Like, comment, and subscribe in all the places. You can find me on YouTube, podcast platforms, and on Substack. If you are a new face and you made it all the way to the end, welcome to the babblings community. We were once called sluts. That may be coming back, but in a positive way. So, love you, sluts. Bye.